This is Dr. Mariah White, host of Your Life Matters. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media.
What's up, everybody? This is Christian Heimel, host of Press Row here on Public House Media. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media. Once you're done with this episode, I hope you'll come check out my show, Press Row, where we talk about the biggest issues in sports with the analysts, experts, and reporters who cover them. No nonsense, hard-hitting interviews on the sports topics you're talking about. A new show comes out every single Thursday. And don't forget to subscribe on iTunes so you never miss an episode of Press Row. Thanks again for checking out the following broadcast on Public House Media.
Welcome to How to Write Good. I am your host, Daniel Poppy. You can find out more about me at danielpoppy.com. You can check stuff out there. I don't have it out yet. Still getting a cover. I have a short story that's connected to my book. So I write a lot of stuff, so I'll get to everything. I write a lot of stuff, so I have extra stuff that I really, really like, and I'm like, well, if I like it, maybe somebody else will like it. So I'm putting other stuff out there that kind of supplements the world of it, because that's a thing these days. And it doesn't maybe tell a huge story, but maybe like a 100-page, 70-page story. That's a little different, something really quick to read, and something maybe a little more artistic. Well, everything I write, I try to make a cohesive artistic unit, but this is a little different. So this show is brought to you by Public House Media. You can check them out on Facebook or at thephmedia.com. Today is the last Wednesday of August, and therefore, since it is the last Wednesday of the month, we have a guest. The guest that is on this week is, we actually were never friends, and I'm not letting any cats out of the bag or anything like that, but I've actually known him since high school. We went to school together, and it was a really interesting thing because I never knew he did any writing, and until recently, which I think is really cool, and somebody's like, hey, I'm also doing something like this as well. So without further ado, I would like to introduce you to Clint Gilman. So Clint, thank you for coming on the show.
No problem. Glad to be here.
All right. So, Clint, this is actually something interesting. I'm not talking to you right now, Clint. So this is something really interesting. I actually, I think this is pretty cool. After I got my book out, or I said it was going to be published in August, which is already out, so you should check it out if you haven't already. Clint actually messaged me. He's like, oh, that's really, really cool that you have it out. And I actually I do writing myself, and so Clint and I have known each other since freshman year of high school, and we're not friends, right? We know each other. We were friendly, but I don't think we ever were like, oh, we hung out with the same people, but we didn't hang out together. Is that fair? But at the same time, just friends on Facebook, which is all that matters. So, Clint, before we start, today we're going to talk about stuff with creativity and just writing, and specifically what he writes. But before we start, can you tell everybody a little bit about yourself? Because I know that everybody loves it when they have to do that.
Sounds good. Yeah, so Clint Gilman here. Right now I work in Black River Falls. I'm a forest ranger on the Black River State Forest. Like we said, I went to high school with Dan, and basically I've been doing my job for 4 years. I went to UW-Madison for 4 years for a forest management degree, got a business minor, and kind of while I was in school, I didn't have a lot of free time, but I was on my laptop a lot, and I decided that I could be doing something else too, and I kind of started writing one of my books while I was in college.
Okay.
And then I finished it probably 2 years out from college, and then started another one. Decided that one wasn't good enough, and kind of did that. But pretty much been writing historical fiction. I haven't gotten as far as you have, but I'm hoping to sometime in the near future.
Okay, so now I have to ask, now we're going to not actually talk about what we're supposed to, but you have to tell me the transition process from not writing to writing. Because for me, I've been writing since forever. So I don't think there's a point in my life, like when I was 12, we moved, and that's where I'm like, oh, I want to do this. But before that, I didn't like. Before that, I think I did stuff similar to it, but it just kind of like slid in for me. It wasn't like this, oh, I should do something else and I'm going to do it. So you have to tell me about if you did it before, like how that worked out, because I'm actually interested in that.
Sure. I don't know if I wrote a ton until, or even did much for writing until maybe sophomore year of college.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have an aunt who lives in Madison too. And her daughter, my cousin, at the time was probably like, I don't know, 12 years old, something
mm-hmm.
like that. And she wrote like a 65-page book.
Oh, yeah.
And so I'm like, if she can do that, I can do it.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And I kind of just thought through it. And one time when I was getting bored of studying, I just kind of started and kind of kept at it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's what it takes. I don't know. Like, I guess there's a point where you're like, yeah, I can do that. And I think that for me, like after writing this book, I'm like, I can do this. You know, like where you're just like, okay, like this is possible. Because right now you have a manuscript. I think it's a dumb word. It's just a book that's not done. You have like a manuscript right now. I did like the air quotes because I think people are gonna see it. Whatever. Yeah. But you can see me, so nobody else can. But you have that done, but you haven't gotten to the publication process. So if you want to, you can ask me about that. But is that done yet? Sorry, I have coffee on, and I need to get it in a little bit. But with the creative process, so what's your method for, like, you start a book? So how do you start a book, or how do you, like, where do you get your ideas for that? Because for me, I don't really do historical fiction. You know, like my stuff is set in history, but it's not really historical fiction at all. And I'm not even sure how I go about it, but what do you do?
I guess for the first manuscript, I pretty much, I did the outline overall of what I wanted to do,
mm-hmm.
and I had an outline for each chapter.
Okay.
And that way, each chapter was like a mini book in
Yep.
itself. And then focused on each one and
mm-hmm.
Just kind of kept going. But that first book, I edited all the way.
Oh, yeah?
I really, that made it take a lot longer.
Yeah.
And then I think it made things not mesh quite as well.
Yeah, I think that, like, for editing, because I think there's like you want to have it perfect right away. And, like, you can't really have it perfect. And I've kind of gotten to the point where I'm like, well, just get the first draft done as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
And you can just do the rest of the writing when you actually get done with it.
Yeah.
So why historical fiction?
I guess I've always been drawn to history. I liked history classes in high school.
Yeah.
Which is kind of odd. And then
you had good teachers in high school.
Yeah.
That's just.
Yep. And then in college, I took a couple history classes, like ancient Greece, ancient
mm-hmm.
Rome type classes. So that's what drew me to it, but then I like the thought of kind of an alternative historical fiction.
Did you do it? Did you do alternative, like an alternative thing? Can you tell me the premise of your books or a synopsis?
So the first one is set basically Viking era Norway.
Okay.
And at the time I was reading a lot of, like, do you know the book Ivanhoe?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I was actually reading like original Robin Hood. And those books are all just about heroics. So they don't. And so basically I made a bunch of heroes, made a great adventure, but didn't do enough characterization at all.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of the main step if I go back and edit that one.
Yeah.
And then the second one, I kind of got the inspiration from things like Mark Twain did a book called Roughing It.
Okay.
I had just watched a movie on Netflix called, I think it's Gold. It has Matthew McConaughey in it.
Yeah, I haven't seen that.
So it's basically, the second one is set in the kind of like just post Lewis and Clark.
Okay.
And so it's an adventure west, and they're basically looking for a very valuable stone that's hidden somewhere in the Rocky Mountains.
Okay.
So it's kind of like, it's basically historical fiction. You have all these historical figures, but then I add in characters of my own.
Okay. Yeah, so it's like it's not an alternate history, which is a whole different ball game.
Right.
Have you ever read alternate history?
I don't know if I have.
Like true alternate history, as in the genre, like the what if, like a what if this, like the biggest one is what if the South won the Civil War. There's a big author. I'm not a big fan of his writing because it's really dry. He's like a historian. His name is Harry Turtledove, and he's like the alternate history writer.
Yeah.
So, if you've ever heard of him, but if you ever want to read it.
But yeah, I guess I don't think I've read a true alternate history or alternative fiction book.
Yeah, there isn't a lot, and it is a small subgenre, and most of it is just historical fiction because it doesn't really change. What do you call it? What's happening, like in the broader scheme of things, like that. It's more like historical fiction is like, this is just another story. This goes on, and this exists alongside everything else.
Sure.
Okay, so that's your second book. Do you have plans for any more, or what? Like, what are you up to right now then?
So I'm working on the second one right now, and I'm about, I don't know, a third of the way in.
Okay. Are you just writing the first draft then?
Yeah.
I interrupt people. My wife hates it. She always is like, stop interrupting me. I'm like, I'm not trying to. I'm just commenting. But
this one, I'm like not letting myself go back and edit. And,
yeah.
I'm hoping it goes smoother and everything kind of meshes better. And then I'm really focusing on characterization. A lot more. So.
Okay. So because you're planning the books, right? Are you planning both the books, or you just plan the first one? Because you said you actually had an outline for the first book, right?
Yeah.
For each of the chapters, and that helped and stuff. Did it help?
Yeah, for sure.
I think. Sorry. Go on. Sorry.
I kind of get the motivation for that from. I tried listening to podcasts as many as I could, and so I do an outline. I do a world event arc. I do character arcs.
Yep.
And then I can see not only how the world goes from start to finish, but also how the characters go from start to finish.
Okay.
And I'm hoping that helps a lot more with my second book. My first book was more outlines, and I did end up making a world event arc, but I never made the character arcs, I guess.
Yeah, so how do you do your character arcs? Because that's something that I am getting better at now, because like this book I just wrote, like that was one thing that it was weaker, let's just say that. And now I was looking at how I could do better in the next one. But how do you do that? Tell me about that.
I kind of make it like a page outline for each character.
Or no, like the stuff of it. What's the content of it?
So I go from everything from, and I'm not sure if this is exactly what you want, but
I'll keep on asking questions until I get what I want. Don't worry.
That's good. So I'll go through a description of the character, where they're starting, where they finish, what kind of issues they have along the way, what makes them overcome those issues, and like how they end up as a better person or worse person at the end of the book.
Okay. Which will leave you with a pretty. I feel like if somebody reads it, they'll be satisfied with what's going on. What's the hardest part about it?
The hardest part is definitely just the grind, kind of. Because for a while I had a goal of 600 words a day.
Yeah.
That's not too many words.
No.
But then when you get in a rut, and then especially with historical fiction too, you might have to look up kind of the historical accuracy of something.
Yeah.
And then fit it into your outline, and then go and write. And so,
yeah.
So I want to stay focused. I want to stay on that 600 words per day goal. But and then of course, me and Kayla have a baby now. So
Yeah. Yeah, that gets in the way, huh? A little bit, maybe. I don't know. I think about 10,000 words a day should be what you're trying to get to. So I don't know. I think I write really, really fast when I'm doing stuff. I mean, I usually don't write I write specific things longhand. I'm writing specific books longhand, and I'm writing another book, and it's all going to be on the computer. But I think I just write really, really fast for whatever reason. Because 600 words, like, I feel like it's just 20 minutes. Sorry. I'm not trying to be mean. It's just how I do things, and it's like crap. It's complete crap. I get done, I'm like, well, I did my words, and it's just to cover ground in some cases, but at the same time, like, I feel like in some cases you've got to do that because you've got to get through it and then kind of make a structure of what you're doing, which is why I actually outline myself. Like, I do a lot of outlining and planning. What's the plan for? Are you going to publish your? We're just going to keep on going. Are you going to publish your first one?
I kind of hope to get done with the second one, edit it, publish that one.
Okay.
And then.
What was that?
And then go back to the first once I'm done with the second.
And rewrite the whole first one?
At least edit it and yeah, pretty much.
Pretty much. I mean, you essentially rewrite it. Are you sick of it yet? Are you sick of that first book yet?
I did get pretty sick of the first one.
But not anymore.
Yeah, I think just in time I won't be.
Okay, but you're still sick of it.
Yep.
Okay. I understand that too, because with this, like, there is, if you were like, well, I'm just gonna publish both of them, I wouldn't blame you at all, because like if you get to the end of a book and you're like, I'm so sick of this, I'm done with it, you're just like, I never want to see it again, because that's how I felt about stuff in the past. So.
Yeah. So, I guess at what point did you finish yours, and then go from that to editing and then publishing?
I kind of like changed my viewpoint on publishing, because there's always going to be things I hate about what I do, about what I'm writing, and I kind of realized that. So what I did, I got to the point where I'm like, well, I've got to do this, and I've got to make it perfect, because there's this sense in the writing world where you cannot put anything out that's not perfect. And I just like, I guess I was influenced a lot by like different types of art. I don't know. I've always liked seeing a progression in art. Like, you see, okay, you have somebody make something, and then they make other things, and you see how that grows out of that first thing. And I started to think, I'm like, okay, this isn't going to be perfect. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it the best I'm able to, right now. Okay. So even like I'm going to make the story the best I'm able to right now, and then I'm going to put it out. So that's what I did, and I went through it. I don't know, like I at least wrote the book. Like I at least wrote the book about 3 times, but it was just when I was going through it, I was thinking to myself, I'm like, okay, if there's any areas in there that I don't like, I'm going to fix, and then I'm going to do that, and that's kind of what I did. And how the book worked is I wrote it in about 3 months, right after I got done with school, and then for the past 5 years, I've been trying to edit it. So halfway through the book, I changed something that completely changed the book, and for 5 years, I've been trying to fix the front end of the book. So that's kind of how that went. And I decided, I'm like, well, is this what the story? I'm like, is this story completely ideal, and or completely? Is this the best story I've ever read in my life? And I mean, of course it's not. At the same time, I'm like, well, this story is supposed to be the beginning of a longer story, and I need certain things to happen. And at the same time, I was thinking, I'm like, well, there is a value in seeing the beginning of somebody's work. So you see them at the start of something, and then you see them 10 years down the line, you see how far they progressed. And I've kind of gotten to the point where if somebody's like, oh, I want to write, I'm just like, okay, write something and publish it, because you have the ability to, and you can only get better if you want to, you know?
Yeah.
So that's kind of my attitude. And I published this book, and now that I'm looking back on it, and I see more and more flaws with the book, but at the same time, I'm like, oh, okay, I can use the information I'm gaining and how I'm thinking about it to write better in the future. So that's kind of how I view it.
Yeah, absolutely. And now you've crossed that major step into publishing one.
Yeah.
I think that's huge.
Yeah, and I think that there's I think that when you before you put your work out, well, at least for me, maybe not for you, but before you put your work out, there's a sense of like, I have to have this absolutely perfect, right? And then you want to go back to it over and over again, which I'm not saying you shouldn't, but there is a certain time limit on how long you should work on something, I think, because otherwise you'll just never want to see it again. Just be like, get out of here, I'm done with you. So I don't remember what I was going to say. I had a thought and it's just completely gone. But I don't know where I was going, Clint. I'm really sorry.
Well, I think.
What was your question again? Sorry.
Well, I think you like, obviously as a writer, you are your own biggest critic. Probably.
Yeah.
But I guess I'd just be interested in how you went once you finished your book. So 5 years later. What made you decide to publish the way you did?
Oh, for self-publishing? Okay, but I got to answer your question, because you said something about actually getting through the publishing thing. So I remembered what I was going to say, and then I'll get to that. So before you publish, you want it perfect, but after you publish, or after I did, I'm like, well, you know, like, this wasn't so bad. So I'm putting something out there. It's not the best thing. But now I can write like a book a year and not worry about it, because I know the whole entire process and I understand it so much better that I can cut the fat, I guess, and I can do it in a streamlined way that'll bring about a better product even than I did before, a lot faster. Now, okay, so why did I decide to publish the way I did? So when I was actually going to go with the traditional publishing route, and it must have been around 4 years ago, I was trying to figure out how that would work with the traditional publishing route. And I don't know, do you know how that works? I don't know if you've done any research on that.
A little bit, but I know it's a lot more in depth than I know.
It's just really, I don't know if it's in depth, but it's really long too. Because when I was looking at it, that's what I was going to do. I'm like, I'm never going to do anything self-published. I was like, I'm never going to do that, because if people do that, they just like haven't made it. And I completely changed my mind on that for various reasons. So the regular publishing route is you get an agent for fiction. So that could take a while, depending on like what you're trying to do or who you're connecting to. So let's just say that takes 6 months or a year. And then the agent gets a publisher, 6 months to a year, because the agent still has to talk to everybody, and then the publisher puts you out on the shelves. They go through the whole entire publishing process, which is about a year, and then you could be out on the shelves for 6 weeks. And I'm like, well, that might be like a 3-year process. And I just started to think about this, and I'm like, what? My mind changed about entrepreneurialism, and my mind changed about selling stuff, because before I'm like, I never want to sell stuff in my life, and then I'm like, well, I started to think to myself, I'm like, if all I have to do is do the footwork and I get complete control over everything, I don't think that's that bad. And like over the past 10 years, over the past 5 years either, the connotation of self-published books has like gone away. And I was just thinking, when I looked at it, I'm like, well, Amazon will always have your books as long as Amazon exists, and you can get physical copies. So what I was thinking is, I'm like, okay, I need to produce something that is professional. And if somebody picks something up, they're like, wow, this is really good. I like how this is put together. This looks really clean. This looks really professional. Then they won't care. I think that's the biggest thing. When I came across self-published books, I always ran into them. I'm like, I don't know, this doesn't seem professional. And in some cases, people are. So like the biggest thing is when you flip through Amazon and you see these covers, these book covers, and you're like, ooh, somebody made that themselves, which isn't bad. If you can make it yourself, that's fine. But I just decided to do that because, I mean, I don't really have the time to do it. Like I don't have the time to get myself out there in the same way.
Yeah.
But I do have the time to write and then get stuff published. And I think the biggest thing for writers is to actually get stuff out there, and then you eventually like gain a following, which is weird. You eventually gain a following, and then people read your stuff, and then you kind of gain a fan base. Same thing. And whatever, I don't know, and then you just keep on writing. So.
And that's the difference with like today's world is you can have your own website, you can have your own Facebook page, and you can really get yourself out there if you decide to.
Yeah, and I was just thinking about, I don't know, I'll have to think about what sparked it. I feel like there's something that that I was thinking about a lot. I know that there's a podcaster who I was listening to who who started off really small and got big. And it's not that they're getting big, it's just like you don't actually have to do a lot of work. You don't sorry, there's a cat walking through his screen, that's why I'm laughing. You don't actually have to do a lot of work to make enough money to live off of. Let's just say, okay, because it depends on how much you're spending, of course. But if you want to make $50,000 a year, which isn't that much, you can almost do anything, right? And that's kind of what I think about. I'm like, well, I'm not expecting to make millions of dollars a year ever doing this. I'm not shooting for that. I'm shooting for being able to live off of it, which I think is pretty reasonable, actually, especially if you continue to put stuff out there. Actually, with podcasting, I guess most podcasts don't last a year even. Most people quit before they even start. So you've just got to be in it for the long haul. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry to butt in, but if people see that you have made that much content, I think that's huge too. If you just continue to make them, people will respect you more.
Yeah, and they'll be like, well, I mean, I don't like this, but this person has so many different things they've made, and they kind of see you as more professional. Because I feel like even just having one book out, people are like, yeah, this person's got one book, so what are they going to do? Like, at the same time, there's like, well, I want 10. And then after you get to that point, it's like, okay, now if people see it, they're like, wow, they've got a lot of stuff. Okay. Yeah. And they're not going to like everything. That's a big thing for me. Like, it's just like, not everybody's going to like everything, but at the same time, if you're trying your best, there's probably going to be someone who likes it. So.
I think the main thing is you have to, like you've been doing, is just put yourself out there, which is tough. I don't know if I'm to that stage.
I actually I wasn't when I started this podcast.
Yeah.
Not at all. I was like, I think I'm really, really stupid for doing this. And then I have this feel. Sorry, I'm talking a lot. You're supposed to be talking because you're the guest, but I'm talking a lot. So tell me what you think of this though. I have a feeling that there's a certain amount of anxiety that, like, before you do anything, you're like, oh, I'm not going to be able to do this. And what you just have to do is be like, okay, I'm just going to try to do this. And then you keep on trying to do it. And eventually you're like, all right, I've been doing this for so long that I'll just do this. Like, I can do this. It's fine.
Yeah.
So.
And I tried some entrepreneurial stuff outside of work, because obviously I'm 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week.
Yeah.
Typically, but some of it was too salesman-y to me.
Yeah.
And I just kind of kept looking back to books. And I don't know, it's just always been a goal of mine to write a book and get it published, get it to the point that you did. So hopefully I can do that.
Oh, you'll be able to do it. I don't see any reason why you wouldn't be able to. All right. Thank you for coming on, Clint. I thought it was really enjoyable, actually.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. Thanks for having me.
All right. See you later, dude.
Yeah.
Bye.